celebrating 11 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Coach George Quarles.
This is Anything is Possible, and my guest today is Coach George Quarles. Coach, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get to your record. 188-14, and the 188 would be the number of games you've won. 14 would be the games you've lost. 9 state championships. When you hear that, what do you think?
Well, we've been pretty blessed, obviously. That's an amazing record that I still can't believe sometimes. When you get into this profession, first you want to be a head coach someday, or I did. And I always said, I'd love to have a chance to win a state championship or play for one. And lo and behold, we've had that opportunity a few times. And like I said, I've been very blessed. And you don't ask why. Sometimes you just kind of go with it.
I think you just said, "Aw, shucks."
That's kind of how I feel.
But let me go back to the numbers, if you don't mind. You don't win 188 games and 9 championships as a high school coach by walking in going, "Well, guys, let's just go out and let's be lucky."
You're right. There's definitely a plan there. I think my mom and dad taught me a lot of humility,
right.
Growing up, and it's sometimes hard to talk about your own self, but, we've had a plan in place.
Well, let me do that.
Okay.
Then. You're pretty incredible. You are incredible. I understand the notion, and it is very present here in East Tennessee, where people, they don't take for granted the opportunities that they've been given, and when they succeed greatly, they always kind of take a step back and say, wait a minute, a lot of things had to converge for me to have that kind of success. But when I get behind the humility, I typically find an incredible work ethic and a lot of intensity. And so item number 1 on my list here is talk to me a little bit about winning. What you've learned about winning. A, how do you create winning teams? B, what does winning really mean? How do you define it?
Well, let's go to the first one. They're creating winning teams. To me, there's lots of ways to win. And unfortunately, our society, we only look at the scoreboard, and that's the only way to win. But I've tried, and I think our coaches have tried to make sure we win each day. Whether it's in the weight room or it's in the hallway or in the classroom. Figure out a way to get better each day. Figure out a way to do something today that you couldn't do yesterday. To me, that's one of the ways you create that winning attitude. And I talk about, our kids will hear me say quite a bit, the scoreboard will take care of itself. You take care of your responsibility, your job. To me, that's how you create a winning attitude. Certainly some of that's built in at Maryville. Our kids grow up, they believe they're going to, exactly. Right. They think they can go play the Dallas Cowboys right now and beat them. Right. And, confidence is not an issue.
Right.
And we don't have to teach that. Some places do.
So where did you learn that, that winner's attitude and that winner's action? Because attitude has to be followed by what you do. Where did you learn that? Because whatever the coach is, you're the one that sets the tempo for your assistant coaches and the players.
Well, I certainly had good coaches growing up, that pushed me all the way along. But I think my dad is a really competitive guy, and I grew up in an athletic family. We pushed each other, and I love to compete, whether it's in golf or
checkers. Or
I love
Uno.
it. And my wife gets kind of upset sometimes because, the Uno game at home will get a little competitive. Bam. That's right.
Uno.
And I love competing, and I hate losing.
I note that you have a brother.
I do.
You both played at Furman
Sure.
At the same time.
That's right.
You won a championship at Furman, But are you very competitive with your brother?
I'm probably more competitive with him than he is with me. You know, I think it skipped a, you know, my sister's pretty competitive, but
Really?
Taylor, my brother, is he's competitive in a different kind of way, but he doesn't get into winning the little stuff. You know,
Right.
to me, it's just important to win at golf or, you know, checkers or Uno as it is on the football field on Friday night. You know,
So-
if you're going to do something, let's do it well.
Let's do it well. So let's say you and I are sitting at Cracker Barrel, and we've got the golf tee puzzles,
Sure.
and you have one and I have one. Are we racing to see who
We're
finishes?
probably going to be racing. We
got
may be respectful about it, but there's going to be a race. If we're driving to wherever tonight, we're going to probably race to get over there within the speed limit.
So if I heard you correctly, what you said about winning is win every day. Not that, but you defined winning in your comments as getting better, working to get better. Kind of expound on that a little
Well,
bit.
I think, you know, for our team, let's say, you know, we want to be as good as we can possibly be, get better each day. That may not mean that we're good enough to beat Whitehaven out in Memphis or whoever, Alcoa or Farragut or whoever. But if we're good as we can possibly be, that's all we can ask of ourselves. And, you know, too many times I think we look at just the scoreboard, you know, and this team we had this year, they achieved as much as any group I've been a part of. You know, we overcame a lot, we overachieved, but we weren't state champions, we were the runners-up. I'm still just as proud of that team as I am these other teams that have won it, because they got better each week. I mean, I'm telling you, you go back through the year, better and better each game, and to me that's what it's about, is improving and being the best you can possibly be, because we're not all going to be,
Right.
you know, a doctor or a lawyer. You know, we got to be satisfied with being the best that we can be, whatever that is.
All right, I want to take a break. We've talked a little bit about winning, and I've kind of got a handle on your winning philosophy. What I'd like to know is what you have to say about losing with a record like this. We'll catch that in just a moment. My guest is Coach Quarles. This is Anything is Possible.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
I hope and pray, you know, that I'm as good a father as my dad was to me, and that I'm as good a husband as my dad is to my mom.
This is Anything is Possible. I'm glad you're with me today. I absolutely love what I get to do every week, because I get to hang out with great people like Coach George Quarles of Maryville High School. Seeing these numbers, I keep going back to them because that's your business. I mean, you go by the score, winning. But there's another number on the page, and it is 14, the number of losses. Do you remember all 14?
Absolutely.
Really?
Sure. You know, any coach, I think you can't stand losing, and I'm certainly no different. But I do know we've learned the most when we've lost. And some of our best, or my best memories, believe it or not, although they hurt and they continue to hurt, are when we've lost. And for example, I think it was in 2008, we played for a state championship, and we had a 74-game win streak, and we'd won 74 in a row, almost 5 full years, and we lost that game. But the thing I'll remember most about that game is how well our kids handled it, and how, you know, there wasn't any throwing helmets. You know, our kids still went out and accepted the runner-up trophy, you know, and went back and showed it to our stands and held it up for them. And, you know, and just to me, you know, that was just a proud moment as a coach that, you know, hey, these guys, they have learned something, you know, that they can handle defeat and can handle, you know, disappointment, because life a lot of times is full of disappointment.
You said the losses hurt, and then you said they still hurt. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's as a coach, you feel like you may have, you know, let your kids down. You know, you did something or I did something that, you know, wasn't quite good enough. You know, it wasn't
188,
I know, but
14.
Well, if you're if you're doing something, if you're competitive, like I hope I am, you know, you want to try to win each one, win each day. And
So you really want this number to be 202?
well, you'd love to be, sure.
Wow.
You don't want to
so,
lose.
so let me ask you this. What is the number one thing you learned from losing? And when you did lose, what didn't you do right? Did you go back and score it and say, here's where you missed?
Yeah, some of those, were certainly, I think one year in particular in 2000, we started off the year 0-4. We're thinking we're getting ready to get moved out of Maryville and find a new town and all that stuff. But that year we won 11 in a row somehow. Won the last 11, win a state championship. But during that time, you learn not necessarily X's and O's, but just how much of under the magnifying glass that the Maryville High School football coach is. And you found out, who your friends were a lot of times. It's easy to befriend the coach that's winning all the time, but you got one that's 0-4, and I think we'd lost. We were 10-7. We were 10-7 in our first 17 games together as a coaching staff, and we found out, maybe this isn't quite the job we hoped it would be or thought it was going to be. And like I said, you learn what's important, and I know that ultimately I'm going to be judged on a whole lot more than 188 and 14.
So you found out 188 friends are different than 14 friends.
That's a great way to put it. Yes.
All right, so let me ask you, what is your record with Jack, Bo, and Leslie?
Well, Leslie's been there the whole time. And I assume
How did they
you're
score
referring,
you?
Right.
Yeah.
I assum you're referring to what kind of husband, what kind of father.
Yeah. What's your record with
and
them?
it's probably not as good as this one. And a lot of times other people get my best, and I don't take my best back home, and that's a disappointing thing sometimes.
Whenever I've talked to coaches, that's the number one thing they say. They talk about balance.
Yes.
And when you think about 8-year-old Jack, is he an athlete?
He's found some, he plays baseball and basketball and soccer.
Do you ever catch him looking at you and looking up to you?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
How's
And
that
I
make
catch
you
myself saying, hey, you ought to do it this way too, and that doesn't go over too well. But yeah, that's balance. We talk about it, and I talk about it, and as a coach, I preach to our kids all the time about being well-rounded, relationships, and there it is. That's a chance for me to practice what I preach, because I'm on at practice or I'm on at school, and a lot of people get my very best. Well, I go home and maybe I've had a long day, and
Right.
And I'm not as nice to Leslie as I should be, or I didn't
Yeah.
go out and play with Jack, or whatever, and that's stuff I catch myself hopefully doing, and I fix it. And unfortunately, you still mess up on that, but that's a whole lot more important than the 188 and 14. And I hope and pray, that I'm as good a father as my dad was to me, and that I'm as good a husband as my dad is to my mom. And that's how I think we're going to be judged.
It's interesting that your model for being a dad and a husband is your dad, and your model for family is your mom and dad, and that Jack and Bo are going to get the same thing from you.
I hope so. Like I said, my dad, he was tough on us, and and I didn't.
Did he ever give you a
understand it.
spanking?
Quite a few. Quite a few. And, looking back, I deserved every one of them. And I didn't understand it all the time. But now my dad and I are close. And, and you can say, I understand why that happened. And I understand why you were hard on us. And it's helped me, adjust to the world we live in now and to be productive in society, I think.
I love your spirit. So let's take a break here. Now here's the question I want you to consider. This was the dialogue. No disrespect to anybody, anywhere, but when UT was searching for a head coach, a new head coach, people were calling into radio shows saying, why don't you go up to Maryville High School and get George Quarles? 2 questions. Did you get a call? Secondly, do you want to coach at the college level? You'll find out the answer to that question coming up.
Coming up,
And I watch these college coaches that don't get to spend time with their families, and you know, it's like somebody told me, you know, you won't get any mulligans, any do-overs on getting to raise your boys.
What a great day today is. I'm getting to hang out with Coach George Quarles. I think I would love playing for you. I mean, you've got this. I coined now I'm not going to use my coined phrase because I haven't trademarked it yet, and it's good.
Okay.
I'll tell you off the air, it's good, but I haven't trademarked it yet. When I tell you, you're going to be like, ooh, I want that t-shirt. All right, anyway, I get to hang out with Coach Quarles today. So this is what I was hearing. I do a radio show too, and people actually were calling in the radio show, and I got more than a few calls from people saying, well, just go up to Maryville. They've got a winner. He's ready for that next level. So my first question is, did anybody contact you?
No.
Okay.
Not anybody that
right.
that mattered.
Okay.
And, you know, and they wouldn't, I don't think. A long time ago, and you probably remember this, Jerry Faust.
Yeah.
He was the coach at Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and he went from Moeller High School and
right.
all the way to Notre Dame, and he ruined it for all the high school coaches, you know, because it was a bust. And so nobody's going to give anybody that chance anymore. But
do you want to coach at that next? Do you want to coach Division I college?
you know, there was a time I did, and I actually interviewed with Coach Fulmer and his staff. He had a tight ends position open, and he was gracious enough to interview me, and you know, fortunately didn't hire me. And it didn't take me long to realize, you know, after getting in the interview that, hey, maybe this is, you know, not for me.
Not for you.
You know, I used to have a desire to say, hey, I want to coach in college, coach at the very highest level, and you know, get to coach all those great athletes. And you know, I've been fortunate enough to coach a couple of times at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and you know, be around Terrell Pryor and you know, some of those guys, Sharif Floyd, who's going to be a top 10 draft choice this year. But that desire has kind of left me, thank goodness, and
wow.
I think because of my two boys.
The real score, Jack and Bo and Leslie.
Yeah, and I watch these college coaches that don't get to spend time with their families, and you know, it's like somebody told me, you know, you won't get any mulligans, any do-overs on getting to raise your boys. And I want to be able to go to their games and see them each night when, you know, put them to bed and,
right.
you know, and that kind of stuff. And so fortunately, I've been kind of led away from the college thing. Now, I will not say never.
Right.
And there may come along a time that, or some great offer that you just can't pass up, but I have a feeling it'll be with somebody I know and have a great relationship that says, hey, you know, we can do it differently than they're doing it at, you know, all these big time schools. You know, we don't have to spend 80 hours a week over there at the football office. You know, we can have the family over, that kind of stuff.
He will be ready in 2030. 2030 is when you can contact him.
Yeah, I'll be probably dead by then.
All right, so let me ask you about a couple of other things. Number one, do you believe that anything is possible?
I do. You know, there's just too many stories out there about guys who or women who have come from nothing, you know, and made it to the top. And you know, certainly it's going to be tough for me to play in the NBA or
right.
you know, the NFL or stuff like that. But you know, I just believe that dreams do come true, and that, you know, if you work at it and if you're in the right place and the right time, you know, it can happen for you. And
all right, here's something else. I'm going to say one word, and then you give me your response. God.
Master of everything, you know, created the earth. Grace, you know, that we're so blessed to live under a God who provides us His grace. You know, think about somebody who sent His Son to die for me and for you, and that's, you know, that's hard for us to fathom. It doesn't make sense. You know, it's so great.
Yeah, when I said that to you, when I just said God, there was a whole other thing that happened just then. What was that?
Well, I am a Christian, and you know, that's, believe it or not, why I think one of the reasons I do what I do, and it's to hopefully have that kind of impact on kids and the people around us. And we've got a coaching staff that, you know, feels the same way I do. And, you know, we can't, you know, in a public school sometimes, you know, that gets a little fuzzy,
Right.
you know, just the separation of, you know,
Right.
church and state. But you know, I think that's our main goal, is to show kids that, you know, Christ through us. And that's something that I fail at a whole lot more times than I succeed, but it is important to me.
Your inner coach. I know how you coach players and I know how you build teams, but how do you coach yourself?
That's a good question. I'm pretty hard on myself.
Are you?
And I think that's one thing that has maybe helped me succeed, is
So-
I'm pretty critical.
Give me some of your mind talk that you use to keep yourself on point.
Well, first of all, my wife, you know, she keeps me on point most of the time, just because she can see me getting the big head on some stuff, and she said, "Now easy, you know, remember." But you know, I just think that, to me, fear of failure is a huge motivator for me, and I know that's probably a negative way to look at things,
Right.
rather than trying to win all the time. Sometimes for me, I'm like, you know, I can't let somebody else outdo me, or can't let this happen.
Right.
You know, that's a big motivator for me.
So you really hold yourself accountable to your standards.
Absolutely. And when we talked about the losses, and you know, I can look back and look at stuff where, you know, maybe we had too many things in that week. You know, our kids were confused, or maybe we practiced too long, or maybe we didn't practice enough. You know, you can look at always things I could have done differently, but nobody is harder on me than me.
Wow. So before you get away, 20 seconds, you can give me one tip on how to generate more possibility in my life. You're coaching me up. You're going to give me one tip, something to hang my world on. Go.
Have faith. I think trust in God. Trust that things are going to work out for the best. It may not be the way you want it to work out all the time, but it's going to work out for the best. And like I said, my life, I wanted to be a college coach. It didn't work out that way, and fortunately, it has worked out even better than I had hoped it would.
I'm marking down as 189 and 14 because
Thank
you
you.
won this interview. This is good. And you want a new friend.
Thank you, sir.
Great to meet you, Coach.
You too.
We'll see you next time on Anything is Possible.